Hey everybody, can you hear me? I'm about to type, see if it's working, because sometimes it doesn't work. So I'm going to check YouTube to see if it works. And if it is, we'll go ahead and proceed. It's just me in here today. Or if there is somebody, it always says that there is someone watching, but I can't figure out if that's me or not, which is kind of weird. Just saying, just kind of weird. All right, we're going to go to Detroit AllyCat, see if I'm live. Dun, 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 dun. It does. It says I'm up. Let's see. I'm live right now. Let's see. I'm live right now. Oh, you can hear me too. Let's see. I'm live right now. Oh, you can hear me too. All right, let's see. Oh, you can hear me too. Does it get louder if I talk into this? Does it get louder if I talk into this? No, it does not. Does it get louder if I talk into this? No, it does not. Creepy. It's really creepy. Okay, that's good. I don't want to listen to that. All right. So, hello everyone. This is Detroit AllyCat. If you are just tuning in, or you're going to come on here later to watch what we're going to talk about, that's cool. If it's going to be me and my dog talking to each other, that's also cool. Do you see that? So most of you guys are going to think that's flyaway hair right there, but this is actually where I hit my head with fire poi. I'm a fire performer part-time, and the worst part about being a fire performer is growing your hair. You can never get it to grow. Like you get it to grow, and then I do fire poi, and I'm like whoosh, and then like a big flame of fire is coming off my head, and there goes my hair. So yeah, I felt like that was necessary to tell you because I can see myself, which is kind of cool, but at the same time, I can see where I'm missing my hair. Anyway, back to what I was saying. This is Detroit AllyCat. I'm so happy to be here with you today. If you are the first time to my channel, I like the strange, the unusual, true crime unboxings. I like anything weird. I do like makeup, so occasionally try to open up makeup and show you guys makeup, and I am going to actually do that next week. But I also like dogs and animals, and sometimes I show that, and then sometimes I just tell you guys about my life. So if you like what you see, stick around, subscribe, give me a thumbs up, tell me how you feel, leave me a comment. That stuff really helps. It really does, because I don't know, the algorithms, if you don't have anybody on your channel, then you're by yourself, which I'm okay with myself. Like, I could set up some stuffed animals and it would look really cool. Let's straighten this out. There we go. So today I bought this from Fenty Makeup. It's called Fairy Bomb, and it was $30, which is like the biggest ripoff ever. But I decided I had to get it, and it really doesn't do jack shit. I was just kind of obsessed with Rihanna, and yeah, so that's that. So today we are going to talk about Jonestown. And the reason why we're going to talk about Jonestown is because I really do not want to do a full broadcast, like a full, like edited version documentary on Jonestown. I don't. I feel like it's been covered so much. But last year, in the year 2021, around Halloween time, I had a haunted house and I opened it up and I called it Carnival Creep Show. Well, I wanted to go with a theme that no one ever heard of, or did, not heard of, did. You know what I mean, right? Even if you don't, there's no one watching. So, haha. I see the one person keeps flickering back and forth watching me. So if you want to say hi, that's cool. So anyway, I had this haunted house and I wanted to have a theme that I'd never heard of in a haunted house. I'm sure it's been in a haunted house, but have the entire haunted house to be the theme, I hadn't heard of it. And I wanted to do something really cool. And it seems like, cults are like something that's like kind of a hot topic. I mean, it's more taboo. I wouldn't call it a hot topic. It's like people are really interested in them. I'm totally interested in cults. Like what makes people want to join a cult? What makes people give up their entire lives, like forsaken their family, give them their bank account and just join a cult? And I have some of the answers of that, and some of them I'm still kind of confused at because, somebody tried to get me to give them all of my money, something which I like, and tell me what to do all the time, like what time to go to bed, what time to get up. Like, I don't think I could hang, but some people do. And, one of the most significant, I actually feel one of the most important cults to learn about of this last century is Jonestown and Jim Jones. And something that I found really interesting is that people do not know who Jim Jones is. Hi, Natasha Dean. It's just me and you right now. I'm so happy to see that you're here. I promise I will try not to ask you any controversial questions, but it's just me and you, so I might. So back to the story. And the thing is that like another really important cult that I wanted to talk about was Waco. And so I had to decide, which one do I want to talk about? Do I want to talk about Waco or do I want to talk about Jim Jones? And both of these cults, and these aren't the name of the cults, they like have their own names. Both of these cults have their own significance in American history for different regal, yeah, it's unedited, so you're gonna hear me screw up. They both have their reason why they're important to American histories, legally, emotionally, just honestly, two completely different types of cults, except for a couple of things that keep cults being called cults. And so I guess I just wanted to start with Jim Jones because I was completely shocked that no one ever heard of Jonestown. Like, I'd been talking to a lot of people that had haunted houses and, I don't know if I said this or not, but I made the haunted house that I had have a theme of Jonestown. And the whole entire thing was based off of Jonestown. And why would I choose Jonestown for a haunted house? Well, at the end of Jonestown's reign. Oh, hi, Micah. How are you? Oh, thank you. I think it's a good topic too. I really do. And you know what, Micah? It's the reason why I want to talk about Jonestown is because I've had so many people ask me who Jim Jones is. I find that incredible personally, like seriously. But the reason why we picked Jonestown for a haunted house is at the end of Jonestown, I believe it was 970 something around there, give or take 20. That's how many people died. That in that day committed mass suicide, which at that time was the most American citizens to lose life unnaturally in one event on one day. I'm glad you're good. Did I ask you if you were good? I hope I did. Sorry. I'm actually not feeling so great today. I ate something yesterday and it gave me a stomach ache. So I've been kind of like, this whole week I've been kind of out of it. But I was like, I want to keep doing this podcast because I feel like this might actually, go somewhere. And it's worth it. I feel like educating people on past true crimes and like paranormal, or at least things that are happening right now, and talking it out is it's important, because not a lot of people like to do that, because right now everyone's screaming at each other. No one's listening to each other. It's all about rawr. You either do what I say or believe what I say, or I'm not going to be your friend anymore. And I think that's BS. I think that people should talk about stuff, especially taboo stuff like what we're going to talk about right now. And you might not think it's taboo, but I do, because the way that I believe in cults and how cults are run and rights and all that stuff is not necessarily the popular opinion of people. Because, I'm going to tell you right now, before we jump into it, I think people should be allowed to do what they want. If somebody wants to have 15 wives, or a woman wants to have 15 husbands, which I really think should happen, because that would be nice, because it would even out the score a little bit, we should not be able to tell them if they can or they can't. Like, I believe that. If these people are consensual and they're of legal age, of sound mind, and they're all agreeing to do this, then why does the government have the right to jump in and tell somebody that they can't do that? Thank you, Micah. And the thing is that, like, when a group of people want to get together and they're like, we're going to live in this big compound and we're going to share our money, our bodies, we're going to plant gardens, and we're going to live as this gigantic family, and we're going to pray to whatever we want. Why does anybody have the right to jump in and say something? And that's how I feel. I really do. I just don't I don't even understand why people have to explain polygamy or homosexuality or trans. Like, this is just common sense shit. It's nobody's fucking business. You know what I'm saying? Like, why the hell do you have to explain those rights? Why don't they have rights? If you're not hurting a child, or you're not like sacrificing animals or abusing someone mentally or physically, it's none of our fucking business, man. Seriously. So that is where I stand with cults. And a lot of people get upset when I say that, and they're like, oh, this and the children. And you know what? Every family has their beliefs, and who are we to tell them what is right and what isn't right? But I digress. I want to talk about Jonestown. You could get me talking about rights for hours. Hours. I'm a libertarian. You can obviously tell that I do not believe that the government has any right to tell you what you should be able to do. And it is very much a fine line of morality, of what, like, the law needs to step in. I believe if someone's getting hurt, or, that's just a whole nother subject. But I think you guys get what I mean. So let's talk about Jonestown. I'm not going to even pretend to say that I have this all memorized. I do not. So I'm going to look back and forth at you guys. But I do know a lot about Jonestown, because it is a very well-known cult. And like I said, I was very shocked when I found out people never heard of them. That's like you saying you've never heard of Kurt Cobain. Please don't tell me if you've never heard of Kurt Cobain. So James Warren Jones, who was a very charismatic man, he was born May 13, 1931. He was an American cult leader. He was a political activist, which made him actually one of the most interesting cult leaders there is, because he did a lot of stuff. And one of the things that he did was actually pretty interesting, is he rose up and stood up against segregation, and he was very much into helping elderly people at their end, like with retirement home. So like this guy, even though he was kind of a monster, he really stood up for a lot of things that were very important at that time. And did he do it because he believed in it, or did he do it to help further his cause? I'll let you be the judge of that. So he died on November 18th, 1978, which is when he convinced or aggressively convinced the rest of his group to commit suicide with him. The reason that you hear the saying, "Don't drink the Kool-Aid," was because of Jim Jones, Jim Warren Jones. We're just going to call him Jim Jones, but I guess his name was James Warren Jones. He was known as a faith healer. And for some of you guys who don't know what a faith healer is, it's somebody who's like, in the name of Jesus, or I guess you could have any like God you wanted to. I'm going to take my hands and I'm going to put my hands on you. And I know that you can't walk because you have multiple sclerosis, but by the name of the Lord, you will walk by the time I put my hands on you. And it's a very big thing. There's typically hundreds and hundreds, sometimes thousands of people watching. And all of a sudden, the person who is paralyzed or handicapped, they stand up and they throw down their crutches, or they push over their wheelchair, and they stand up and they start wobbling about. And everyone's like, "Oh my God." And at this time, the group, the God group or whatever group is like, "Now you need to open up your pockets so we can continue healing people." And for most of the time, I'm not going to say all of the time because I don't know all the history of faith healers, but most of the time it's a scam where the person was never really handicapped, or sometimes, placebos can have such an effect that for a second that person can get that much adrenaline and they can actually stand up and do it. And, that's awesome for that second, but they wake up tomorrow and they can't walk. But that is what a faith healer is. They have another name for it, what is that damn word? Evangelistic preacher, pastor. They have like them big, gigantic meetings and they're all talking the tongues. For those of you who don't know what talking of the tongues is, that's when you're filled with the Holy Spirit and all of a sudden you're speaking this language that nobody understands, and it's just coming and rolling out of your mouth and you look like a crazy person. That's my opinion. I apologize if anybody speaks tongues, but they start shaking and foaming, and yeah, that's talking of the tongues. So going back, so he was a faith healer, and he ran a company. Well, he did own a company called the People's Temple. So that's the name of his church. It was the People's Temple. And it existed between 1955 and 1978 until the last event that they had ended it. I mean, they definitely ended it. And what he was described as revolutionary suicide. Now, something that some of you morbid people, I'm a morbid person too, there's no shame in it, would find interesting is that Jim Jones loved to tape his sermons. He taped all of them. He was very abusive, and he liked to beat his people that were in his group, which is kind of surprising to me. Like, how do you beat people and get them to stay around and make them say that it's awesome? But I guess that really does involve the psychology of abuse, right? But nonetheless, so Jim Jones, he just loved videotaping all of these sermons. And the most interesting of this fact is he actually taped the last sermon that he ever had. I would say 1 year up to 6 months, he practiced something called white night, which I find a very interesting term to call it. He would call it white night, and he would call all of his people down to his outdoor area. I just thumped the microphone. Sorry about that. He would call all of his people to his area, and he would say white night, white night. Everyone was supposed to wake up and walk over to the tent, and he would be like, you have to have loyalty. This isn't exactly what he said, but you have to have loyalty, and you have to believe in me with all of your heart. And the Lord says that we need to go back to him and rejoin him, and wherever Jim Jones thought that was. And he would be like, we're all going to commit suicide. So he would hand out cups, and everyone would be like freaking out. And he'd be like, show me that you could be that I can trust you. And they would drink it. And then he would be like, just kidding. I just was doing a drill. Go back to bed. And everyone would be like I would be kind of like, what the fuck, but happy at the same time. And so, that's actually what happened the last time that he held a sermon. He called a white night. Everybody came out, and he did a whole sermon, and he had everyone drink Kool-Aid, which was laced with, I think it was arsenic and some kind of I want to say a barbiturate. Maybe it was a benzo. I don't know. It was some kind of a sedative and a poison. And he taped this. He taped it. And you can actually hear his whole sermon, and you can hear people drinking the Kool-Aid, and you can hear people dying. And, it's actually very interesting. And you can very easily find it on YouTube. You put in that little search engine. I think it's Jim Jones suicide sermon or the last tape or something like that. I listened to it. It's like 2 hours long. It's really sad because at the end there was this older Black woman, and she just seemed like she was just so smart and intelligent and kind, and she did not want to die. And she was arguing with Jim Jones. And Jim Jones' thing is that he believed in, I want to say it was socialism, but I think they called it communism, but it was more of a socialist belief. So, a lot of people get socialism and communism wrong, and I also find that socialism and communism can be mixed up because, communism is when you have one person telling everybody what to do. And it's almost like a monarchy. And then socialism is when everybody is supposed to be getting treated like the same way. Like everybody has money, everybody has health care, everybody puts into the pot, and everybody gets a certain amount of money in a pot. In a perfect world, that's awesome. But that is what Jim Jones' big claim to fame was that, he wanted this perfect, we're just going to call it socialist, but I feel like it was communist. Socialist, like this whole perfect socialist group of people, this utopia, if you will, where everyone of race and color, and I believe race and color are the same damn thing. Sorry about that. Race and gender and even sexuality. Like he was like all about gay rights too, which, at that time was kind of a big thing. Like, there's not a lot of people out there that were like, don't judge everybody. At that time, everybody was judging everybody. So, Jim Jones is basically saying, I'll take everybody. Did Jim Jones truly feel like that? once again, that's your call. I personally think that he just wanted everybody he could possibly get to join his cult, and he did not care. If he could have had 100 talking cats, he would have been like, rights to cats that talk. That's just my way, I think. So anyway, this black lady is talking with him. She's basically telling him, like, if the American government is coming for us, which there's a reason why Jim Jones thought the American government was coming, then we should just go move to Russia, because they'll let us stay there. Because, Russians would be down with having a cult move into Russia. But, she was going at it. Nobody else was arguing with him like that. And I really felt bad for her, because, she didn't win. And she's on the list of people that committed suicide. And anyway, you can find those tapes, and they're very interesting, and you'll hear her, and I'm sure I will find her name in here. And it's a very interesting thing to hear. So let's go over how this all played out, because it's important. Because I believe in the beginning, Jim Jones was not that bad of a guy. I think that he probably had good intentions, or maybe he was just a little power hungry. But to be honest, is any leader not a little bit power hungry? So he ran things better in the beginning. And as time went on, it started to get more and more weird, more and more corrupt, and he did more and more weird things. So let's just talk about how it started and how it ended. You want to hear that? Yeah, you should. Are you talking about the death tapes? You just go right into YouTube. I'm talking to Micah, if anybody should see this. I'm not talking to myself, even though I have done stuff like that. He was definitely a control freak. And I really highly suggest any of you guys. Do you know what? I'm going to go ahead and Google that for you. Can I do that? I'll put that in there. Can you still see me when I do that? I don't know. We'll see. I'm still here, though. Let's see. This is kind of weird. It'll be interesting if you can still see me. Jim Jones death tapes. Okay, I'm going to see if I can get that for you. Oh, yep. Got it. All right, let's see. I don't want it to play, though. And it says this following content may contain bad stuff. Well, it says something else other than bad stuff. I can't see. You know what? I'm just going to copy and paste this little link up here. I'm going to put it right here. Oh, you can see me? Okay, good. Because I couldn't see me because I was Googling that for you. That should be it. I just put in the first thing I found. So there's the link to the death tapes. Pretty interesting. I think it's pretty interesting that that man did that. Like, he taped it. Because, I mean, he must have really had a huge ego. And that's probably why he did it. All right. Let's go through it. So Jones and his inner circle orchestrated a mass murder, suicide in his remote jungle commune at Jonestown, Guyana. I know I probably said that wrong. Guyana, on November 18th, 1978. So he started here in the United States, and for some reason, which we'll get into, he ended up moving to Guyana. I'm not real sure where Guyana is. It feels like it's like tropical African. It's not really like one of them places that you hear about a lot, but that is where Jonestown ended up being. All right. As a youth, Jones developed an affinity for Pentecostalism. That's that whole faith healing, the big tents and all that stuff, and a desire to be a preacher. He was ordained as a Christian minister in the Independent Assemblies of God and attracted his first followers while participating in the Pentecostal latter rain movement and the healing revival during the 1950s. And I think I read some stuff about that. You're welcome, Micah. I think that is the reason that he ended up getting to be so popular, is because he did so much of that faith healing, that everybody saw him doing the faith healing, and they basically felt like he was chosen by God because he could heal people. But then they began to find out, they found out after the huge suicide that it was all fake, where am I? Jones' initial popularity arose from his joint campaign appearances and endorsement by the movement of prominent leaders, William Branham and Joseph Matson Bowes. With their support, Jones took a leadership role in multiple international conventions where he recruited many new members for his church. Jones founded the organization that would become the People's Temple in Indianapolis, which is pretty close to Michigan, in 1955. Jones distinguished himself through civil rights activism. He was huge into abolishing segregation. He was all about there should be no segregation, which is pretty cool in my eyes. Jones distinguished himself through civil rights activism, founding the temple as a fully integrated congregation. There were more Black people than there were white people, but they were together, and they said that there was no racism in that group. And actually, there was all kinds of race. There were Asians, Latinas. It was supposed to be a accept everybody utopia. And it's too bad that anything like that ends up turning out to be crazy, because that would be good. That's good. In 1964, Jones, here it talks about it. He promoted Christian socialism. Now, it says socialism, which socialism is supposed to be the lesser of the two evils, communism and socialism, but I'm just going to be honest. Anybody who, and this is just my opinion, anybody who preaches that they believe in socialism, it always ends up turning out to be some messed up communism. And it just seems like socialism is like the good intentions of keeping a society safe and everything being equal and everyone being taken care of. And then what it turns out to be is communism, where you have some evil ass person controlling the entire society, and nothing is equal and nothing is good, and somebody has total control over you. And honestly, if you look at Jonestown as a whole, that's kind of what happened. Jim Jones had total control over his people. He had total control over everything that happened. He made it seem like he was asking his congregation, like, how do you feel about this? And if they told him and it didn't go with what he had to say, he would shame them in front of everybody. And it was kind of horrible, because he used to beat his congregation. I said that. And, you disagreed with Jim Jones. He would take you up in front of the congregation and beat your ass. And he would tell everybody in the congregation to beat that person's ass, and he would get the whole congregation hyped up. And honestly, this is where I feel like that would be the red flag. The red flag is the fact that your God-loving, God-fearing pastor, whatever he considered himself, is beating people's asses because they don't agree with him. That's a red flag to me. But for some reason, people didn't see that as a red flag. They stayed with him. I think, the 70s was such a hard time with the segregation laws and elderly people not getting treated right. There was a lot of protests. And I really feel like Jim Jones came out and he was like, I am the good guy and I am here to take care of everybody. And I don't believe in segregation and racism. And I think that we should all live together in this perfect utopia. And when a community, when a group of people or a country is under such duress by bad shit. And I think around this time, the Vietnam War was going on too. So you had that whole situation. People get tired of that. They get tired of all the violence. They get tired of all the nastiness. And they're more easy to con than a regular society because they want a savior. They want someone to save them. They want someone to tell them, like, hey, I'm the good guy. I'm going to stand up for you guys. Come follow me. And that is what Jim Jones did. And let's go back into his story. In 1965, Jones moved the temple to California, where the group established its headquarters in San Francisco, which is a very beautiful place and very open-minded, and I could see how a lot of cults could be there, and became heavily involved in political and charitable events through the 1970s. Jones developed connections with prominent Californian politicians and was appointed as the chairman of the San Francisco Housing Authority Commission in 1975. He actually had a lot of political leaders backing him, and he was a very strong and powerful man for a very long time. And I'm just going to skim through what I think is important here. Jones became progressively more controlling of the members of the People Temple, and at its peak, it had 3,000 members, which doesn't seem... Oh, Explores Products and... Hi, Angie, Explores Products and Services. So 3,000 people does not sound like a lot of people to be, for whatever reason, but that's a pretty big following for some crazy person like beating people's asses in front of everybody. And so he had 3,000 followers. Jones' followers engaged in communal lifestyle in which they turned over all their income and property to Jones and the People Temple, who directed all aspects of community life. Now, if you're working on stuff while I listen, well, I appreciate you tuning into us. So, for elderly people that are scared, like what's going to happen to me, or their family don't come to see them and all that stuff, that's like something that is kind of a relief. They don't want to deal with financial. As long as they're getting fed, they have a bed, and they have people to be around them, and they feel like they're some part of a community, that's kind of like an amazing situation for someone who's retired and just wants to live out their golden years. And I feel like, in the beginning, on behalf of Jim Jones, I feel like he really wanted to help and he really wanted to take care of those people. But then he did what most people do when they get more power. He just got crazy. And that sucks, because there should be people who go out there and fight for the elderly and taking care of them and making sure that they feel that they have a good life, not depending on how much money they have. And that's something I feel real strong about. I feel like the only elderly that get taken care of are people with money. And that's just not right. It's just not right, because, once you reach a certain age, I don't think it matters how much money you made your entire life. People with less money probably struggled and had it worse their entire life. I think that, we should set up a society where, at a certain time in someone's life that, they have an area to go to that's monitored, and we have the assurance they're not going to be taken advantage of, and they can be happy. I think that should be our duty as a society. These people brought us into the world, and maybe it wasn't perfect, but they're the reason that we're here, and we should take care of them. And we just don't do that. And it kind of like pisses me off how many elderly people are homeless or in nursing homes that Medicare pays for, and they end up like getting their stuff stolen and just awful stuff. And that's the problem, is somebody like Jim Jones comes along and he's willing to jump into a situation where nobody really wants to get involved in. So somebody is volunteering to help solve something that is a problem. I think most people do want good things for elderly people. They just don't want to be the person that does it. And so when you have somebody who steps up and says, you know what, I want to do this, then everyone's like, oh, okay, you got this. And they want to listen to him because they want to believe in him. And you're saying the situation spun out, and I'm guessing mental health and substance abuse played a large part. Yes, that absolutely did. Does any country do well by their elderly population? I have no clue if any place is doing it well. Well, here's the situation that's different than America. So I find out, and to be honest, in any country, any society, any civilization, nothing's perfect, because you're always going to have a majority of this population that something bad is happening. So nothing is 100% perfect. But I find in Europe and, other civilizations that you have the third and fourth generation, grandma, grandpa, great grandma, great grandpa, they don't leave the home. They stay with the family, and the family takes care of them. Now, here in America, we're in a civilization where we tell our kids, you need to go 18, you got to get out of my house. And, in return, the kids are like, why would I want to take care of you if the first thing you did was kick me out? They don't say that, but that's the mentality that they have. And, we're just not a family-based society in America. Some people are, or at least they put on the face of being a family, and I might be jaded because my family is so broken and just not good. I mean, I'm the one who wants my kids to stay and live with me forever. I'm the one who's like, if you guys have kids, I want you to live here and I'll help take care of the kids. But my parents were not like that, and it's just, I think America as a whole is very selfish. They don't want to think about anybody else except for themselves. And that's just my personal opinion. I find in European countries like Norway, yeah, my family is totally broken, seems to be the norms these days. And unfortunately, Angie, that is the norm. People don't have any care as to how grandma and grandpa are doing. Or they do. They do in the middle of the night, but when they wake up, they don't go out and, fix it. They just don't give a shit. I mean, that's just the truth. They would rather throw them in a home and try to work out how much it will cost to take care of them than to actually think, you know what, I'm going to make a room in my home to take care of grandpa and grandma. Or a lot of parents are just like, as soon as this kid turns 18, they need to get out. I can't imagine that. Seriously. Like, I can't imagine kicking your child out at 18. I don't care how crazy they are. Like, those are your kids. The way they're acting, as much as people would disagree with me, has something to do with how they were raised. And I mean, of course, you're going to have your situation where you have mentally ill or, problem learning disabilities or whatever, but these are your family members. There shouldn't be contingent reasons why you keep your family together. It's unconditional love. But let me not get off the subject. Oh, I was talking about Norway, wasn't I? Yeah, it's horrible how some people can treat loved ones. It's absolutely disgusting. It is part of the reason that I do not like the general population is because of how other people treat other people. But Norway, it's very common for grandma and grandpa to live with the families. And, I haven't really done a lot of research on it, but that does seem to be more the norm more the norm not in this country and less the norm in this country. So why is that? I think that America as a whole is a little bit more selfish, and we have not that great of values sometimes. That's just on this situation. But, Jim Jones saw that, and he saw that as an opportunity to basically tell people, like, hey, I had the solution to this problem. And this is part of the reason why, he became so popular. And that's the same thing that goes with segregation. I have to let my dog out of my room. I'll be right back. You can stare at my wall. It's really nice. That's actually me and my husband when we were in our 20s, if you can see it. All right, here. Oh, there she goes. No, I'm recording us right now. My son just came upstairs, and my dog just loves my son. She wags her little tail and does this little walk to him. So where was I? Oh, my daughter's out here. I'm recording. Everyone can hear you. Want to say hi?
Someone just screamed, help me. I heard, help me. And then a crash outside. Yeah, by the road.
So apparently someone screamed, help me outside.
Seriously.
My family's going to go check on that. I'm going to keep talking to you guys. So I was talking about segregation, and the reason why Jim Jones was so loved by his congregation and so many people were willing to accept him is because at that time, segregation was a really big thing. Like, people, there's no good way of saying what I'm about to say. People of different color skins had to sit on different places in a bus. They had to live in different places and cities. There was a lot of tension. And, Jim Jones steps in and he's like, we're all going to live together and be together. And we're going to be this great big family. And who gives a shit? And, people want to hear that. And they want to be like, yeah, this guy's got it together. Nobody wants to step up and actually be the person who says that this is the way it should be. So when somebody actually does do it, they're like, well, here you go. This is perfect. And he did that. So, you got this guy who did do drugs and eventually and did a lot of really whacked up stuff. Let's talk about the whacked up stuff. So I've talked about the good stuff. Let's go into the wacky stuff. Do you guys really want to hear about his early childhood? I guess he was poor. Woohoo. We've all been poor. I don't want to hear about his early religious beliefs. So I want to talk about his marriage. I'm going to have a drink really quick, though. I can talk a lot. You know that? I'm guessing you guys do. These are pretty good. Have you guys tried these? So I'm on this 0 sugar diet because keto is good for people. Thank you, Angie. Keto is good for people who have autoimmune diseases and cancer and all that stuff. And I don't know, sugar, I don't know how to describe it. So keto is a 0 sugar. It's more protein-based diet. It's supposed to be really good for you. This has 0 sugars in it, and it's called sparkling ices. I'm trying to cut pop out of my diet. I love pop. I love Dr. Pepper. And yeah, it's really good, Angie. Like it helps with arthritis. It helps with like just a whole bunch of stuff. And so the sparkling ices, they're with kiwi strawberry. It's almost like a sparkling water, like a very light, fruity drink. I don't know. It's got no sugar in it, and it's kind of what I've been living off of. Not a paid promotion, people, obviously, by all 4 of you guys watching me. All right, so let's get into his marriage. All right, so talks about his high school, talks about sports. He didn't like sports. I think he had 2 marriages. Yeah, he had 1 marriage before. It didn't work out. Then he married Marceline Baldwin. So Jones and Marceline Baldwin continued their relationship while he attended college. And the couple married on June 12, 1949. Their first home was in Bloomington, where Marceline worked in a nearby hospital. And Marceline was a really big advocate for elderly people's rights. So Jim Jones, like, him and Marceline were like the dynamic duo. They talked about what they believed in. And I believe Marceline really, really, like, she's the one who wanted to do a lot of good too. So they ended up getting married. Marceline was Methodist. Who cares? And she and Jones immediately fell into arguments about church. Jones insisted on attending Bloomington's Full Gospel Tabernacle, but eventually compromised and attending a Methodist church on most Sunday mornings while attending Pentecostal churches on Sunday evenings and weekends. That's a lot of church. Jones' strong opposition to the Methodist Church's racial segregation practices continued to strain their marriage. Through the years, their relationship was affected by Jones' insecurity. He often felt the need to test Marceline's love and loyalty, and at times he used sadistic methods to do so. In 1950, the couple unofficially adopted Marceline's nephew, Ronnie, who they cared for over a 4-year period. They ended up like adopting a bunch of kids. They had like 6 or 7 kids. But what was interesting about this is they ended up adopting a black child, which back in that day, that was not too common for. Jim Jones was not white. He had a little bit of something in him. I think it was Native American or indigenous, and then a little bit of Spanish. I don't know what kind. And but Marceline, she was pretty much your typical American white person. And they adopted a black child, and their son, he even talked about it, and he felt like, Jim Jones did that because he wanted to show the rest of the world that, this is what he was doing. And he said that Jim Jones used to call him my black son, which I find very weird. Like, why do you need to call him that? And I really feel like they did that for a political standing. Now you're going to hear my dogs in the background. I apologize. So, we're going through all the good stuff right now. I'm just going to read you a little bit about the racial integration. In the 1960s, Jones also helped to racially integrate churches, restaurants, and the telephone company. Now, that's something that's important. So, at this time, he had 3,000 members, right? So, he was totally a token, Angie, 100%. So they would go to a restaurant. Jones would go in there, right? They would go in with one of their black friends. And the restaurant owner would be like, you can eat here, but your friend cannot because he's black. And this part is beautiful, I think. So Jim Jones would say, okay, well, this is what we're going to do. We're going to boycott your restaurant until you start treating everyone equally. So no one would go to that restaurant for a couple weeks. And then the restaurant would call Jim Jones and they would be like, we take it back, we serve everybody. And then that restaurant would no longer be segregated. And these are the kind of things Jim Jones did. So, as messed up as he was, he really did some things that, took some major balls and had his heart in the right place, even if I don't know if his heart was in the right place. I don't know if he was just doing it to get people to like him, or sometimes it doesn't matter. It takes the most evil person to do something that makes something good, I guess. I don't know. I have to be careful of that because, there's some major evil people out there that did good things. And this is one good example of it. And it turned out really bad. But Jim Jones did that. And so that's that. Oh, now this talks about, he used to call his family a rainbow family. Jones and his wife adopted several non-white children, referring to the household as his rainbow family and stating integration is more personal thing with me now. It's a question of my son's future. See, that's his black son. And he also portrayed the temple as a rainbow family. In 1954, the Jones adopted Agnes, who was part Native American. In 1959, they adopted the Korean American children named Lou, Stephanie, and Suzanne, the later of whom adopted at age 6, encouraged temple members to adopt orphans for war-ravaged Korea. Jones was critical of U.S. opposition to North Korea leader Kim Tu-sung. I know I'm saying, is that how you say it? Yeah, I guess, whatever. We're just going to say it. Someone can correct me. Kim Tu-sung. It's the guy before Kim Jong-sung. I'm sorry, guys. Called the Korean War a war of liberation, and stating that South Korea is a living example of all that socialism in the North has overcome. Is a living example of all the socialism in the North has overcome. So I don't think that South Korea is communist. I don't know, maybe it was then. Or socialist, I apologize. So, relocating the People's Temple. In 1961, Jones began to warn his congregation that he received visions of nuclear attack. Now, remember, this is all during, after World War II and the Vietnam War, so he had all that on his sides. He said it would devastate Indianapolis. Jones' wife confided to her friends that he was becoming increasingly paranoid and fearful. He was also doing drugs, by the way. And like other followers who moved to South America during the 1960s, Jones may have been influenced by South America during the 1960s. That didn't make any dang sense. Jones traveled with his family to Brazil. That didn't work out. Well, wait a second. On his way to Brazil, Jones made his first trip to Guyana. That's where he ended up, which at that time was still a British colony. Jones' family rented a modest 3-bedroom home in the town. Jones studied the local economy, receptiveness of racial minorities to his message, although language remained a barrier. I don't think Guyana cared. I think that they were excited about having people move in. And drugs were a huge, huge factor. So anyway, back to Guyana. I think they saw an economy, more people coming, it's going to bring more money. And so they were like, they had the same view that I had. It's none of my business what he's doing. So I've been talking for a while. We should get to what happened at the end. So basically, we're gonna go through it. So basically, Jim Jones moved all his people over to Guyana, and slowly he took all of the members and he took their passports and he hid them. And then he had multiple people he was sleeping with in the congregation, which, that's not really the issue, but one of them was the nurse, and she would give him drugs. I guess he was really into speed and stuff like that, and she was giving it to him, and also sedatives, and he was just acting really crazy. And they were doing a lot of work in Guyana, and like people said that they were working really long hours, like 18-hour days. People started talking about not wanting to be there. There ended up being a senator that was really concerned for them. They were hearing family members complain that saying that Jim Jones would not let them talk to the family members that were in the cult. So the senator, let's find it. What happened? Dun, 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 dun. Pressure. I talked about the white knights. Okay, congressman. It wasn't a senator. In November 1978, Congressman Ryan led a fact. It was Congressman Ryan. That's all they call him. It was something else. Leo Ryan. Congressman Leo Ryan. Gonna take another drink, people. Congressman Ryan led a fact-finding mission to Jonestown to investigate the allegation of human rights abuses. His delegation included relatives of Temple's member, NBC cameraman crew, reporters for several newspapers. The group arrived in Guyana, capital of Georgetown, on November 15. 2 days later, they traveled by airplane to Port Katatuma. Yeah, is that how you say it? I guess so. Then they were transported to Jonestown in a tractor transporter. Jones hosted a reception for the delegation that evening at the Central Pavilion in Jonestown. During the Temple member, Vernon Gosney passed a note meant for Ryan. Don Harris requested the assistance for himself. Basically, he passed a note to one of the news people. They found out this is really messed up, but then the congressman asked who wanted to go, and that guy ended up saying he wanted to go, but he left his kid behind. The congressman went to an airplane, and Jim Jones basically ambushed the people that went to the airplane to take his followers, and the congressman ended up dying. A whole bunch of other people ended up dying. Then some of his followers from that ambush came back to Jonestown and basically told everybody at Jonestown, like, this is the end, the big white knight. Jones received word that his security guards had failed to kill all of Ryan's party. Jones concluded the escapes would soon inform the United States of the attack, and they would send military to seize Jonestown. I guess they would come, but I don't know. Maybe, I mean, if you look at what they did to Waco, maybe that would have happened. Jones recorded. Okay, so Jones called the entire community to the Central Pavilion. He informed the community that Ryan was dead, and it was only a matter of time. Jones recorded the entire event on audio tape. I put a link up there for it. On that tape, Jones tells Temple members that the Soviet Union, with whom the Temple had been negotiating, he was never negotiating. That was all a lie. Negotiating a potential exodus for months. They would not give them passage to the airstrip. According to Jones, men would parachute in here on us. With that reasoning, Jones' several members argued that the group should commit revolutionary suicide by drinking cyanide-laced grape-flavored flavor aid. Oh, remember I talked about the little old lady who got upset? Her name was Christine Miller. And then Jones' wife, Marceline, apparently protested killing the children. She was forcibly restrained and then joined the other adults in poisoning herself. 85 members of the community survived the event. Some members slipped into the jungle. One elderly woman hid in her dormitory and slept through the event, awaking to find everyone dead. The drink consisted of flavor aid mixed with cyanide, was created and handed out to the members of the community to drink. Those who refused to drink were injected with cyanide via syringe. The mass murder-suicide left dead 909 inhabitants in Jonestown. 304 of them were children, mostly in and around the Central Pavilion. There was also that little house in Guyana, and they had a whole bunch of people living there too, not in Jonestown, and he called them and told them to commit suicide. So they committed suicide. It was so horrible. And it's crazy because you can also Google the pictures of all the people in Jonestown after they committed suicide, and they're like laying around, and you can see all these 900 and some people laying around Jonestown completely dead, and you can still see it to this day. So yeah, that's the story of Jonestown. But there is something really important that I want to read you real quick before I let you go, because I feel like that was a pretty good explanation. I mean, there's so much you could talk about Jonestown, but the message above Jim Jones, it's so important. Jim Jones chair. I think you guys are really going to like this. I should put a picture of this up. It was, when I read this, it gave me chills. Okay, Jones had his little podium. Can you see this? No, not even in the slightest. There it is. That's his podium, and that sucks. It says, those who do not remember the past are condemned to repeat it. That gave me chills. And that's why I wanted to tell this story, because when I found out people didn't know about Jim Jones, I was like, what? And I just thought it was so important that you guys heard about Jim Jones. And what's really important is that you learn that he wasn't always doing bad things. Like, he was super into desegregation and elderly rights and all these things. And yeah, so that is my first talk about a cult, I guess. Is it my first talk about a cult? There's a whole bunch of cults I really want to talk about. There's one that is going on right now called Carbonation, and they're so crazy. I don't want them to know I'm talking about them, though, because they're super on social media. I do really want to talk about Waco. I think it's very important because the only thing that I've heard, Heaven's Gate. I will probably cover Heaven's Gate. I've studied Heaven's Gate a lot. That's a very, very interesting cult. You're a great storyteller, great live, even though Bam Bam was missing. I know, Bam Bam didn't feel good either. I'm telling you, we went to an event yesterday, and they let us eat at some kind of buffet. We were performing at a murder mystery dinner thing, and they said we could eat, and so me and Bam Bam are vegetarians, so we can't eat very much. And literally the only thing that was there was salad, mashed potato, and green beans. That was vegetarian. And I don't know if it was the ranch or the mashed potatoes or what, but I woke up feeling like I had a weight in my stomach. And Bam Bam was like, do you care if I don't go on there? And I was like, no, I don't care. But she'll be back next week. Yeah, she's okay. She's okay. Me and her, we have very sensitive stomachs. Our stomachs are always messed up. But I will tell her you guys missed her. No, it does. You know what? That's the thing, is that anytime you go out to a fancy event, they don't ever have anything for vegetarians. And we're vegetarians. And so, yeah, they don't, that's not the first time that we've had situation where I'll tell her you guys are worried about her. She'll think that's sweet. So yeah, that's my story of Jim Jones. I will be here every Sunday at 7:00. I was a little bit late today because as soon as I opened up my computer, it was updating. And I was like, are you serious? So I had to watch it update for 10 minutes, but I knew you guys would understand. So I will be back here at 7, Micah. She will be back here. I'll tell her you said hi. And then we will talk about something really cool next week. Maybe I'll talk about Waco, or maybe we'll talk about the Latter-day Saints. I don't know which one we will talk about. It'll be a surprise. But I'm so happy you joined me. please don't forget to like, subscribe, ring a bell, leave a comment, tell your mother, tell your father, tell your kids, tell your whatever. I don't know. Anyway, stay spooky and stay safe. Bye, guys.